This tiny island nation is smaller than New York City, but it's the wealthiest country in Asia and one of the richest in the world.
A small island with no natural resources, limited defenses, and a tiny population. This unlikely starting point hardly seems like the blueprint for global success. Yet, against all odds, Singapore defied expectations and emerged as one of the most influential and prosperous city-states in the world. How did this remarkable transformation happen? Today, we uncover the extraordinary story of Singapore, from a humble trading post to a thriving global powerhouse. It's the early 19th century in Singapore. Then, Singapore was a little village where fishing was its inhabitants' source of income. But all that changed when the British decided to expand their influence in Southeast Asia to counter the Dutch dominance in that region. The Dutch East India Company controlled most of the valuable trade routes in the area, and the British East India Company wanted a new trading post to build its influence. In 1819, a British official, Sir Stamford Raffles, arrived in Singapore with the mission to establish a British foothold in the Straits of Malacca. He saw the potential of Singapore's location, which was ideal for controlling maritime trade between India, China, and the rest of Southeast Asia. Following this, Raffles met Singapore's local rulers to establish a British settlement and signed a treaty granting the British East India Company the right to build a trading post on the island, thus formally establishing Singapore as a British colony. Raffles implemented the free port policy, allowing merchants to trade without paying customs duties, and then declared Singapore as a free port inviting traders from all over the world. This was a big move at the time, as most ports in the region were heavily taxed and regulated. This policy immediately attracted traders from China, Malaysia, India, Arab, and Europe. By 1820, Singapore's population had grown rapidly, becoming one of the most cosmopolitan cities in Asia. The free port model turned Singapore into a thriving center for regional trade and transformed it into a trading center for all kinds of commodities. In 1826, the British East India Company with two other British territories, Penang, Malacca, and Singapore, formed the Straits Settlements. At first, the Straits Settlements initially operated under the British East India Company with Penang as the administrative center. However, with time, Singapore quickly outpaced Penang as the region's administrative center and dominant economy. During this period, the colonial administration began to invest in public services and government buildings to help support the growing population in Singapore. Under the East India Company rule, the administration of Singapore and the Straits Settlements was often poorly funded and managed, and this led to calls for change. In 1867, the British government restricted its colonial holdings, and the Straits Settlements were made a crown colony, bringing them under the direct rule of the British Colonial Office in London, and Singapore became the administrative capital. When things were going quite well, the Second World War started and destroyed everything. The British died due to this and weren't also able to protect Singapore and its citizens. This made Singapore begin to advocate for self-governance. However, in 1946, after the war, the British created a Malayan union joining Singapore with Malaya, but many Malayan nationalists opposed this. In 1948, the Federation of Malaya replaced the Malayan Union with Singapore as a separate crown colony. In 1959, Singapore became self-governing with Lee Kuan Yew as its prime minister. In 1963, Singapore joined Malaysia, hoping that a merger would ensure economic stability and foster unity. However, this didn't work too well as tensions emerged between the two governments, stemming from different political visions and racial policies. By 1965, these differences had become irreconcilable, and on August 9, 1965, Malaysia's parliament voted to expel Singapore. Singapore, now a tiny island state with no natural resources, minimal defenses, high unemployment, and housing shortage due to overpopulation, faced an unsure future. Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew recognized that Singapore could fall anytime, and for it to survive, it would need to become indispensable economically.
You see, the whole of my adult life, I had believed in Malaysian merger.
He and his team then planned to transform Singapore into a center of trade and finance. But how would they create a stable and prosperous nation from scratch, knowing they had very little chance to succeed? Well, Singapore leaders got to work almost immediately and adopted policies to attract foreign investments. They created the Economic Development Board to support industries and invited major companies to set up operations. The Prime Minister realized that having a robust infrastructure is very important for attracting foreign investors and began to invest in ports, very efficient transportation systems, and modern housing facilities. This helped Singapore to gain recognition as a reliable gateway to Southeast Asia.
He laid the fundamentals, which is a solid financial and legal system, stable and largely clean government, making sure that the public transport system is efficient, has world-class healthcare infrastructure.
After working on infrastructure, the government moved on to education and skill training, knowing that this would also help support industrial growth. They invested so much in education intending to build a skilled workforce that is capable of handling technological industries, financial services, and advanced manufacturing.
Right from decolonization days in the 60s, we need to build people with skills who can work in the factories, who can work in the offices, and a large part of investment has been put into education.
Schools that focused on building vocational and technical skills were also established so Singaporeans would be equipped with the skills necessary in a highly industrialized economy. This smart move helped prepare Singapore's workforce to meet up with the demands of global companies that would set up operations in the country. The Singapore Housing Development Board was established in 1960 before the country's expulsion from Malaya. However, the expulsion in 1965 caused the government to focus on the need for affordable housing, as the city-state faced housing challenges due to overpopulation. The HDB continued its effort to provide affordable housing, and within the first 3 years, 31,317 flats were built. Today, 80 to 90% of Singaporeans live in HDB apartments, making it a cornerstone of Singapore's social and economic transformation.
Singapore must be one of the few places in the world where a statutory board satisfactorily completed everything it set out to do in its first 5-year plan.
Lee Kuan Yew focused on an efficient and corrupt-free government. He viewed it as a fundamental step to Singapore's success. To achieve this, he implemented strict anti-corruption measures to build trust and attract foreign investment.
Freedom of the press, freedom of the news media must be subordinated to the overriding needs of the integrity of Singapore.
This worked, and Singapore was able to build a reputation for integrity, making the country a safe place for business. This, in turn, attracted multiple multinational companies and laid the groundwork for sustained economic growth. In the 1970s, Singapore shifted its focus to the financial sector, creating favorable policies and regulations to attract international banks and other financial institutions. The government also managed to encourage banks to establish operations in Singapore, turning it into one of Asia's top financial hubs. By the 1980s, it was recognized as a key player in global finance. Today, Singapore is known for its highly developed finance and insurance sectors, and this contributes greatly to its GDP. Singapore's leaders forged partnerships with both Western and Asian nations, ensuring it became a bridge between the East and the West. It joined ASEAN to foster regional economic cooperation and focused on stability to attract investors. Singapore also opened its stock exchange market, leading to new opportunities for capital flow, making the country a prime location for companies seeking Asian expansion. Realizing the potential of tourism, Singapore's government decided to invest in world-class infrastructures that would draw the attention of visitors from anywhere in the world. Slowly, they developed natural reserves, entertainment hubs, and cultural landmarks. This led to a great enhancement in Singapore's national image and diversified the economy at the same time. To remain competitive in a world that is rapidly advancing, Singapore embraced innovation and technology as essentials for future growth. Initiatives to support startups, invest in R&D, and foster a knowledge-based economy have positioned Singapore as a leader in technology and innovation.
Well, despite the economic concerns over tech for next year, Singapore will inject an additional $440 million into a scheme to help deep tech companies scale up. The government will use it to match private sector investments.
One of the notable innovations is the Smart Nation initiative launched in 2014. The main aim of this ambitious program is to use technology to improve the quality of life for citizens, enhance government efficiency, and drive economic growth. This includes initiatives in areas like digital payments, smart transportation, healthcare, and data analytics. Currently, Singapore is one of the richest city-states on the planet. This has not only transformed the country, but has also affected the world. its small size hasn't served as a limitation to its ability to rise above its weight in key global sectors. As of today, Singapore is now regarded as one of the world's top financial centers, competing with London, Norway, Qatar, Switzerland, Ireland, and others. The country has attracted many major international financial institutions like HSBC, Citibank, Standard Chartered Bank, DBS Bank, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Barclays, and so many more due to its stable political environment, low taxes, and simplicity in doing business. Singapore Exchange has become a hub for capital flow in the country. Putting finance aside, Singapore has also been able to establish itself as a regional leader in insurance, fintech, and asset management. The financial sector is currently one of the key contributors to Singapore's GDP.
Singapore's economy grew 2.7% on year in the first quarter of this year, lower than the 3% forecast by economists in a Bloomberg survey.
Since Singapore's port is located at the crossroads of major trade routes, it has become one of the most efficient in the world. The port for a long time has served as a gateway between the East and West, promoting the smooth movement of goods across the globe. Also, Singapore's air cargo and transportation services are among the best globally. Singapore's airlines have consistently ranked among the world's best airlines due to their exceptional customer service, innovative environment, focus on the safety of its passengers, sustainability, and consistent innovation. This has also helped play a significant role in enhancing its trade partnerships, boosting tourism, and attracting multinational companies. Moreover, Singapore has also been very interested in education and has invested greatly in it. As a small nation, they have leveraged its knowledge-based economy to gain influence globally. Through initiatives like the Smart Nation Project, Singapore is striving to become a global leader in digital innovation, with applications ranging from urban planning to healthcare and financial services. Singapore's research institutions, such as the National University of Singapore, have attracted top talent and established the country as a knowledge hub. The government continues to invest heavily in attracting global tech companies, and with a focus on areas like AI, fintech, and sustainability, Singapore is positioning itself as a frontier in the 21st century economy. On the global political stage, Singapore has maintained a position of neutrality, balancing its relationships with global powers such as the US, China, and India. It has consistently advocated for free trade, regional stability, and multilateral diplomacy, becoming an influential voice in ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
We are a believer in trade. Trade is existential for Singapore because we are such a small, open economy. Trade is 3 times the size of our GDP. And as part of ASEAN, our philosophy is that we want all the major powers to engage ASEAN and to have stakes in ASEAN. And that's why we tell our friends in both America and China, engage the region more constructively and comprehensively.
Singapore also hosts international summits and is frequently involved in peace-building efforts in the region, contributing to its reputation as a trusted and respected global player. But what does the future hold for this country? As Singapore enters the future, one question lingers. Will it be able to sustain its growth in the face of challenges? Let's find out. Singapore's economic future looks bright. Analysts predict a stable inflation rate, hovering around 2% by 2025. The central bank has decided to keep interest rates unchanged, with a potential easing in January 2025. GDP growth projections are impressive. $548.15 billion by 2025, $573.46 billion by 2026, and $626.28 billion by 2028. Over 4 years, signaling rapid economic expansion. For the manufacturing sector, a rebound is expected with a 1.48% compound annual growth rate from 2024 to 2029. Also, foreign investment continues to drive growth, with the US, Netherlands, China, Japan, and Hong Kong contributing significantly to the $151 billion FDI in 2023. This trend is expected to continue, fueling Singapore's economic growth in the next 5 years. Currently, Singapore remains one of the best countries for investment in 2024 and beyond. As we step away from Singapore's incredible journey, one question remains. How does a nation with no natural resources, limited space, and countless challenges rise to become one of the richest and most influential in the world? It's a story of bold vision, unshakable determination, and relentless effort, proof that greatness can emerge from the most unlikely places. feeling inspired by Singapore's remarkable transformation. This is just one of many stories of resilience and triumph waiting to be told. Stick with us, because the next journey might just change the way you see the world. Thanks for watching.